The human fleet was in ruins. Smoke and fire filled the dark space between broken ships. Captain Elias Rourke stood on the bridge of the Resolute, the last human warship still operational. The crew was exhausted, their faces pale, their eyes heavy from 3 days of non-stop fighting. The enemy was unlike anything they had ever faced, an alien empire with ships larger than cities and weapons that burned through metal like paper. And at the center of it all was her, the Queen of the Vare Dominion. The view screen flickered, and suddenly she appeared. The alien queen's image filled the bridge, her eyes glowing like molten gold. Her voice was calm but carried an undeniable weight of command. "Human," she said, "your fleet is destroyed. Your defenses are shattered. Surrender now, and I may allow some of your kind to live." Every officer froze. No one dared speak. Rourke could feel the pressure in the room, like gravity itself had grown heavier. The queen was beautiful in a dangerous way. Tall, with silver skin that shimmered like starlight, and a crown that seemed to grow from her head like living crystal. Her presence made it clear. This was not a negotiation. This was a demand. Rourke stepped forward, his boots heavy against the steel floor. "And if I refuse?" he asked, keeping his voice steady. The queen's lips curved into something between a smile and a warning. "Then your species will become nothing but a footnote in galactic history. Do not make me repeat myself, human." Silence filled the bridge. His crew looked at him, waiting. The easy choice was to surrender. The logical choice was to live. But logic had never been humanity's strongest weapon. The queen expected fear. She expected compliance. Instead, Rourke felt something else. Curiosity. And maybe, just maybe, a dangerous idea. He took a slow breath and let his eyes lock on hers through the view screen. "You want my surrender," he said. "But what if I offered you something else?" The queen tilted her head, clearly intrigued. "Something else?" Rourke's voice didn't shake. "My hand." The bridge crew stiffened, unsure if they had heard him correctly. A low murmur spread among the officers, but Rourke didn't take his eyes off the queen. She was silent for several seconds, studying him as if he were a puzzle she didn't understand. Then she spoke, her voice lower now, almost dangerous. "You propose a bond between you and me?" "Yes," Rourke replied. "Not as enemies, not as conqueror and conquered, but as allies." The queen leaned back slightly in her throne. The room behind her was vast, filled with banners of alien silk and guards in armor that looked grown rather than forged. She didn't laugh. She didn't scoff. Instead, her eyes narrowed, as if measuring the weight of his words. "You think one human can change the fate of an entire species?" she asked. "I think one choice can," Rourke said. A long pause followed. Then the screen flickered again, and her image vanished. The crew erupted in whispers. Some called him insane. Others thought it was a trick to buy time. But Rourke didn't explain. He knew the queen wasn't finished with him. Minutes later, a deep vibration shook the Resolute. The alien flagship, a massive obsidian-colored vessel shaped like the blade of a scythe, moved closer. It dwarfed their warship completely. A single transport broke away from the flagship and headed toward them. "Captain," the comms officer said nervously, "the Queen's shuttle is docking with us." Rourke felt the tension coil tighter in his chest. This was it. She was coming here in person. And no one knew whether she would accept his offer or kill him where he stood. The airlock hissed open. Steam rolled into the docking bay as the alien queen stepped through, surrounded by her guards. Her presence was even more overwhelming in person. Her crown glimmered under the cold ship lights, and the golden fire in her eyes seemed brighter than any star. Her gaze locked on him instantly. "Captain Rourke," she said, her voice echoing through the bay. "If you are lying, I will end you before your heart takes its next beat." Rourke nodded. "Then let's make sure I'm not lying." The Queen took a step closer. The guards moved in, but she raised a hand, stopping them. You have one chance to prove your worth, human. Speak carefully. He didn't look away. I offer you my loyalty. Not as a prisoner, not as a servant, but as an equal. You want power? Unite with us and you'll have more than any war could give you. For a moment, her expression didn't change. Then something unexpected happened. The corner of her mouth curved upward. It wasn't a smile. It was something sharper, more dangerous, like a blade catching the light. Very well, she said. Let us see if humanity's courage is more than just words. And just like that, the fate of two species began to change. The docking bay felt colder now, as if the air itself was holding its breath. The alien queen stood just a few paces from Rourke, her golden eyes studying him like a predator sizing up its prey. Her guards remained still, but their hands never left their weapons. Every human crew member on the deck kept their distance, unsure whether their captain had just saved them or doomed them all. The queen's voice cut through the silence. If you wish to stand as my equal, human, you will prove you can survive where my own warriors fear to go. Rourke didn't flinch. Name it. She tilted her head. The trial of the rift. The words meant nothing to him, but the way her guards shifted told him it wasn't something taken lightly. What's in the rift? He asked. Her lips curved slightly, but not in kindness. Something that kills without warning. It is a place where only the strong return. She stepped closer, her height forcing him to look slightly upward. You will go there, alone. If you return, perhaps your offer will be worth my time. Before he could answer, she turned to one of her guards and spoke in her native tongue, a flowing, sharp language like steel scraping on stone. The guard bowed and left to prepare. The queen looked back at Rourke. You have 1 hour. Rourke followed her and the remaining guards through the ship's corridors. The alien flagship was unlike anything he had seen. The walls pulsed faintly as if the metal was alive. The air carried a faint scent of ozone and something floral. Alien crew members stopped and stared as they passed, whispering to one another in disbelief. It was clear they had never seen their queen bring a human aboard like this. They reached a large chamber, its center dominated by a circular platform surrounded by shimmering blue energy. The queen gestured toward it. The rift awaits. Rourke glanced at the swirling light. And what exactly am I supposed to do in there? Survive, she said simply. The guards pushed a small pack into his hands. Inside was a basic energy blade, a sealed container of water, and a strange device with no instructions. You will know when to use it, the queen said, her tone unreadable. Without another word, she pressed her hand to a panel, and the energy around the platform shifted. Gravity seemed to twist, and the air grew heavy. Then, with a sudden pull, Rourke was gone. He landed hard on rocky ground. The sky above him was a deep, unnatural red with jagged black clouds swirling like smoke. The air was thick, each breath tasting faintly of metal. Around him the land stretched out into broken ridges and sharp cliffs. A sound broke the silence, a low, rumbling growl. Rourke turned slowly. From behind a jagged boulder, something emerged. It was massive, easily twice his height, with a body like a muscular feline but covered in segmented chitinous armor. Its eyes glowed faint blue, and its many-toothed mouth opened in a hiss. The creature moved fast. Too fast. Rourke barely dodged. As it leapt, its claws gouging deep scars into the stone, he rolled, drawing the energy blade and slashed at its side. Sparks flew, but the armor was thick. The creature spun, tail whipping toward him, and the blow sent him sprawling into the dirt. Pain shot through his ribs, but he forced himself up. Running wasn't an option. This thing wasn't just here by chance, it was the trial. The queen had sent him to fight something her own warriors feared. The beast lunged again. This time, Rourke ducked under its swipe and jammed the blade between two plates of armor. The creature roared, but it didn't fall. It slammed him against a rock, knocking the breath from his lungs. His hand scrambled for the strange device in the pack. He pressed it, and it flared to life, emitting a piercing, high-frequency tone. The effect was instant. The creature froze, its glowing eyes flickering. It shook its head violently, backing away. Rourke realized the tone was disorienting it, buying him precious seconds. He surged forward, driving the blade deep into its unarmored throat. The creature, convulsed, then collapsed into the dust. Breathing hard, Rourke stepped back, wiping sweat and blood from his face. The rift was silent again. Somewhere above, the red cloud swirled slower now, as if acknowledging his survival. A flash of blue light surrounded him, and suddenly he was back on the alien flagship's platform. The guards looked startled, maybe even impressed. The Queen's gaze was locked on him, unreadable. "You live," she said softly. "I told you," Rourke replied, his voice hoarse. "I don't lie." For the first time, her lips curved into something that could almost be called a smile. "Perhaps humanity is not as fragile as I was told." She stepped closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "But one trial does not make you my equal, human. The next will test more than your strength." Rourke straightened. "Then I'll be ready." The Queen turned and walked away, her guards following. But as she left, she glanced back once, her golden eyes catching the light in a way that made his chest tighten. It wasn't just curiosity now, it was interest. And that was far more dangerous than the rift. The alien Queen's flagship moved through the dark edges of space like a predator stalking prey. Captain Rourke stood on the observation deck, staring out at the stars. The memory of the rift was still fresh. His ribs ached from the blows he'd taken, and his hands bore cuts that hadn't fully healed. But the Queen's words lingered louder than the pain. "The next will test more than your strength." He didn't have to wait long to find out what she meant. The alarms blared suddenly. The lights dimmed to red, and alien crew members rushed to their stations. The Queen appeared at the far end of the deck, her long silver cloak flowing behind her as she approached. Her expression was calm, but her golden eyes carried a sharp edge. "We have an attack," she said simply. "A colony of my people, unarmed, has been struck by raiders. They won't survive without help." Rourke nodded. "Then we help them." The Queen's gaze didn't leave his. "The colony lies deep in hostile territory. To reach it quickly, we must abandon the path toward your fleet. If we divert now, your people may be lost before you can return to them." The meaning was clear. If he saved her people, his crew could die. If he went back to his crew, her colony would be destroyed. The choice was a blade, and she was watching closely to see how he'd cut. Rourke's jaw tightened. "You're testing me." "I'm seeing. If your words mean anything," she replied. "You offered me your hand. But a hand that won't bleed for another is useless." Silence filled the deck. The alien officers around them waited. Rourke could feel every set of eyes on him, human and alien alike. He didn't have time to weigh comfort against honor. The decision had to be made now. He turned toward the Queen. "Set a course for your colony." A flicker of something passed through her eyes. Approval, perhaps. She gave a sharp command in her language, and the ship banked hard, engines roaring, to full burn. Hours later, the alien colony came into view. From orbit, it looked peaceful, clusters of crystal-like towers glowing faintly in the dark. But the peace was a lie. Smoke rose from the far side, and small black shapes swarmed the air above. Raider craft fast and vicious. The Queen didn't wait for a plan. "We deploy now," she said. "You will lead my ground troops." Rourke blinked. "You trust me, with your soldiers?" "No," she said. "I want to see if you can make them follow." The dropship ride was short and violent. Alien soldiers in segmented armor sat across from him, their four-fingered hands gripping energy rifles. They eyed him with doubt, some with open hostility. A human leading them into battle was an insult in their eyes. When the dropship landed, the heat of burning structures hit them immediately. Screams echoed between the crystal towers. Rourke stepped out first, drawing his weapon, and shouted to the soldiers, "We hold the East Road. Push the raiders back from the civilians." They hesitated, until the first group of raiders appeared, armored in scavenged gear, firing from rooftops. Rourke didn't wait for orders to filter through alien command structure. He charged forward, firing in short, precise bursts, forcing the raiders to take cover. His sudden aggression caught the alien soldiers off guard, but then something shifted. One by one, they moved up with him, covering his flanks. They fought hard and fast. Rourke's boots slipped on shattered crystal. His shoulder burned where a bolt had grazed him, but he didn't slow down. He pulled 2 civilians out from under a collapsed walkway, covering them until a soldier could lead them away. By the time the last raider fled into the hills, the eastern road was secure. Smoke still hung in the air, but the colony was no longer burning. The Queen herself arrived on the ground soon after, stepping through the wreckage as if the heat didn't touch her. Her golden eyes scanned the scene, and when they met his, they lingered longer than before. "You chose my people over your own," she said. "I chose to keep my word," Rourke replied. For a moment, she was silent. Then she stepped closer, her voice dropping low so the others wouldn't hear. "Your loyalty is dangerous, human. I am beginning to wonder if it is for me, or for what you believe I can become. Maybe both," Rourke said. Something unreadable flickered across her face before she turned away, issuing orders to her soldiers. But as she walked off, Rourke saw it again, that sharp glimmer of interest in her eyes. She had wanted to test him. Instead, he had made her question herself. Back on the flagship, the course was reset toward human space. But Rourke knew things had changed. He was no longer just a prisoner or a guest. He was becoming something far more dangerous, someone the Queen might start to trust, and in the Vare Dominion, trust could be the most powerful weapon of all. The Queen's flagship glided through the deep void toward the Vare Dominion's capital world, a planet wrapped in rings of silver and gold. From orbit, its surface shimmered with sprawling cities, each one pulsing with alien lights like veins in a living heart. Captain Rourke stood at the viewing platform beside the Queen, her golden eyes fixed on the sight below. "This is where your next test begins," she said without turning. Rourke glanced at her. "Another trial?" "Not of strength," she replied, her voice cool. "Of survival." The Queen led him through winding corridors until they reached a grand chamber. 2 towering doors slid open to reveal the Vare High Council, a half-circle of raised thrones, each occupied by an alien figure draped in ceremonial armor. The air was heavy, thick with unspoken tension. Rourke didn't need an introduction to know these were not his friends. The Queen took her seat at the center throne, her silver cloak flowing around her like liquid light. "Counselors," she announced, "this is the human who has twice proven himself worthy of standing before me." The murmurs were immediate, low, sharp voices filled with disapproval. One counselor, his skin the color of deep bronze and eyes like polished stone, leaned forward. "A human? You bring an outsider into our chamber? Into our trust?" "He is not here as a guest," the Queen replied evenly. "He is here as a candidate for alliance," another counselor scoffed. "Alliance or influence? We have seen humans before, Queen. They are impulsive, weak. They burn bright but burn out quickly." Rourke stepped forward before she could respond. "Funny," he said. "Your people seem to be losing colonies to raiders while you sit in a circle and argue. If weakness is surviving where others fall, maybe I'll accept the insult." The room went silent. The counselors stared at him with thinly veiled hostility. The Queen's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but something close. The bronze-skinned counselor rose slowly from his throne. "Then let us see if your courage is more than noise, human. I challenge you." Rourke raised an eyebrow. "To what?" "A proving duel," the counselor said. "No weapons, no armor. You leave here alive, and I will hear your Queen's talk of alliance without interruption." The Queen didn't stop him. She leaned back in her seat, eyes glittering with something between amusement and warning. "Do you accept?" she asked. Rourke met her gaze. "If I say no, you'll look at me differently. If I say yes and lose, I'm dead." Her voice was low. "In my court, human, survival often depends on the choices you dare to make." Rourke turned back to the counselor. "Fine. Let's get it over with." The chamber's floor shifted, panels retracting to reveal a circular arena surrounded by an energy barrier. The counselor removed his ceremonial armor, revealing a body built like carved stone, cords of muscle under gleaming skin, Rourke rolled his shoulders, feeling the weight of the moment. The fight began fast. The counselor moved with alien speed, his strikes heavy enough to make the barrier ripple when they missed. Rourke ducked and blocked where he could, letting his opponent's momentum carry him off balance. He took a hit to the ribs, another to the jaw, but stayed on his feet. He noticed the counselor's stance, strong, but with a habit of overcommitting on his swings. The next time a heavy punch came, Rourke sidestepped and hooked an arm under the alien's, using his own force to send him crashing into the barrier. The counselor roared, lunging again, but Rourke dropped low, sweeping his legs out from under him. They grappled on the ground, Rourke's forearm pressing against the alien's throat. The counselor struggled, but Rourke held until the alien's hand tapped the floor in submission. The arena fell silent. Rourke rose, chest heaving, and offered the counselor a hand. After a pause, the alien took it and stood. The Queen's voice broke the silence. "It seems the human is not so fragile after all." The counselor gave a grudging nod. "Perhaps not." The session continued, but the tone had shifted. There were still suspicious glares, but also a new, begrudging respect. When the meeting ended, the Queen walked with Rourke through the grand hall. "You risked much," she said. "You could have been killed." "You brought me here to prove myself," he replied. "I'm just making sure you get what you wanted." Her golden eyes lingered on him longer than before. "Be careful, human. You are beginning to matter. Here. And in this place, that can be more dangerous than being hated." As they reached the docking bay, Rourke realized something. This wasn't just about proving himself anymore. The Queen was drawing him deeper into her world, and every step was a step further from the life he had known. And somewhere in the shadows of the council chamber, not everyone was willing to let him take that place beside her. The Vare capital glittered under twin moons that hung low in the sky, casting silver light across its crystal towers. Inside the royal palace, the grand banquet hall was alive with sound, alien music that pulsed like a heartbeat, the murmur of dignitaries, and the faint chime of crystal glasses. Captain Rourke stood near the Queen, both of them in formal attire. His human uniform had been replaced with a dark, high-collared garment the palace tailors had prepared for him. It felt strange, but it carried the mark of the Queen's court, making it clear he was not a mere guest tonight. He was her chosen representative. The Queen herself was breathtaking under the moonlight filtering through the glass ceiling. Her silver skin reflected the soft glow, and her crown caught the light like a ring of captured stars. But behind her calm expression, Rourke could sense the constant calculation in her mind. She was watching every smile, every nod, every movement in the room. "This night is a test," she murmured without looking at him. Rourke arched an eyebrow. "Another one?" She sipped from her glass. "Not of my making." Before he could respond, a servant passed by, carrying a tray of shimmering fruit. The Queen's golden eyes followed the servant for a fraction too long. Then she stepped slightly, closer to Rourke. "3 of the counselors who opposed you are here tonight. They smile now, but they would rather see you bleeding on this floor." Rourke's hand drifted to his belt, where a concealed blade rested beneath the formal robe. "Do I smile back?" The Queen's lips curved faintly. "You'll do more than that." The night unfolded with layers of political theater. Rourke was introduced to high-ranking Vare generals, trade envoys, and nobles whose titles meant little to him but carried enormous weight here. Each one measured him with subtle glances, as if trying to decide whether he was a curiosity, a threat, or an opportunity. But then he saw it, a shadow moving where it shouldn't be. Near the high balcony, a figure in matte black armor was climbing down the pillars, moving silently toward the banquet floor. The figure's hands glinted with thin, curved blades. Rourke's eyes swept the room. Another figure had appeared near, the serving tables slipping something into a wine jug, and a third shadow moved along the edge of the hall, hand hidden under their cloak. He didn't need the Queen to tell him what this was. Assassins. Rourke stepped closer to her. "We've got trouble." Her gaze flicked briefly toward the balcony, then she stepped back, her voice quiet but steady. "Then we deal with it. Together." The first assassin dropped from the balcony, moving fast toward the dais where the queen stood. Rourke intercepted, grabbing a decorative spear from the wall and driving the blunt end into the assassin's chest, knocking them backward into a table. Glass shattered and guests screamed. The second assassin lunged from behind the serving table, blade flashing toward the queen. She moved with lethal grace, her hand catching the assassin's wrist before twisting it until the blade clattered to the floor. In one smooth motion, she swept his legs and sent him crashing onto the marble. The third assassin made it halfway to the dais before Rourke slammed into him, the two of them rolling across the floor. The alien's blade sliced the air just inches from Rourke's throat, but he twisted, driving his elbow into the assassin's jaw. The alien snarled, recovered, and came at him again, only to freeze as the queen's voice cut through the chaos. Enough. She was holding the second assassin's own blade to his throat while staring directly at the one Rourke was fighting. Her golden eyes burned with a dangerous light. Leave now, and carry a message. Anyone who comes for him comes for me. The assassins hesitated, then backed away, retreating into the shadows they had come from. The hall was still tense, but no more blades were drawn. The guests whispered in shock, some in fear, others in grudging admiration. The queen turned to Rourke. "You fought well." "So did you," he said, brushing shards of glass from his sleeve. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "They will try again. Tonight was only the beginning. You've drawn blood in the council chamber, and now in the banquet hall. The more you win, the more dangerous it will become." He met her gaze without flinching. "Then let them keep coming." For a long moment, her eyes searched his. Then she smiled, not the sharp, dangerous smile he had seen before, but something smaller, almost personal. "Perhaps I was wrong about humans." "Perhaps," he teased. She turned, her cloak sweeping behind her as she walked away. "Earn the rest of the answer, Captain." As the hall slowly returned to its music and chatter, Rourke realized something important. The queen's enemies were now his enemies, and that meant every step forward would be on a blade's edge. And if he slipped, the fall would be deadly, for both of them. The queen summoned Rourke to the War Council chamber at dawn. The room was lit only by the pale glow of the capital's twin moons, casting long shadows across the polished obsidian floor. High-ranking Ver officers stood in silence around a circular table, their eyes shifting between the queen and the human she had brought into their inner circle. "There is an envoy from the Kethar Dominion," the queen began. "They claim they want peace talks, but the Kethar are not known for peace." Rourke had heard the name before. The Kethar Dominion was the Ver's oldest rival, a brutal empire that had fought them for centuries. "And you want me to be the one to meet them?" he asked. Her golden eyes held his. "They requested you by name." That sent a murmur through the room. Ver officers glanced at one another, some openly suspicious. "That's a bad sign," Rourke said. The queen's lips curved faintly. "It's also an opportunity. If they mean to test you, give them a reason to regret it." Within hours, Rourke was aboard a small diplomatic vessel, flanked by two of the queen's most trusted guards. The trip through hyperspace was silent except for the low hum of the engines. The Kethar meeting point was a neutral station, if such a thing could exist in this galaxy, floating above a barren, storm-covered moon. When they arrived, the station loomed like a rusted crown in the void, its surface pitted from centuries of neglect. Rourke and his escort stepped into its dimly lit corridors, the air stale with the scent of metal and oil. The Kethar were waiting in the main hall, tall, broad creatures with rough, obsidian-like skin and deep crimson eyes. One of them stepped forward, his voice gravelly. "Captain Rourke, the Queen trusts you." Rourke kept his tone even. "She does. That is unfortunate," the Kethar said, a grin spreading across his jagged teeth. "Because you will not be returning to her." The attack came fast. The guards barely had time to react before the Kethar warriors surged forward, their heavy weapons cutting through the air. Rourke ducked behind a support pillar, drawing his sidearm and firing into the advancing line. One guard went down under, a crushing blow, the other pushing forward to cover him. It wasn't a negotiation. It had been a trap from the start. They fought their way down the corridor, blaster fire echoing off metal walls. Rourke took a hit to the shoulder, the burn searing through his uniform, but he kept moving. The remaining guards shoved him toward a narrow maintenance hatch. "Go! I'll hold them." Rourke hesitated for a split second, then forced himself through. Crawling through the narrow ducts, he could hear the sounds of battle fading behind him. He emerged in the docking bay, heart pounding, and sprinted toward their vessel, only to see Cathar fighters already closing in on it. He didn't have the firepower to fight them all. He needed another way out. His eyes swept the bay until they landed on an old cargo skiff, its engine still warm. Moments later, the skiff roared to life, lifting off just as Cathar bolts scorched the metal where he had stood. The craft was slow and unarmed, but it carried him away from the station and into open space. The comm system crackled to life. It wasn't the Cathar, it was the Queen. Her voice was sharp, urgent. "Rourke, where are you?" "In one piece," he replied. "The Cathar weren't here to talk. They wanted me dead, and I think they wanted you undefended." There was a pause on the line. "The palace," she said finally. "They've moved against me." Rourke's grip on the controls tightened. "I'm coming back." "You can't make it in time," she said. "And if you try, they'll destroy you before you reach the capital." "Then tell me what to do," he said. Her voice lowered. "There is one way, through the Veil Rift. No ship dares cross it. But if you do, you'll arrive before the Cathar can close their trap." Rourke looked at the star chart. The Veil Rift was a swirling expanse of gravitational storms, a region where ships disappeared without a trace. He thought of the banquet, the council chamber, the battlefield. He thought of her standing alone against enemies in her own court. "I'll take the rift," he said. Silence, then her voice, softer now. "If you do this, Captain, you may not survive." He allowed himself a small grin. "I've been hearing that since the day we met." The skiff turned toward the swirling, luminous maw of the Veil Rift. The stars around it twisted like liquid, pulling him into a place where space itself bent and screamed. The controls shook violently, alarms blaring, but Rourke kept his hands steady. Every instinct told him this was madness. Every warning light said he wouldn't make it. But somewhere ahead, beyond the chaos and light, was the only path to her, and he wasn't about to let her face the storm alone. The Veil Rift was alive with chaos. Space twisted into spirals of light, and shadows of impossible shapes moved in the void. The skiff rattled, as if it would tear apart at any second. Rourke's hands gripped the controls until his knuckles turned white. The storm's gravity pulled and pushed without warning, dragging the skiff toward invisible cliffs of pressure. Lightning-like energy bolts slashed across the hull, shaking the ship so hard he bit his tongue. But through the madness, the coordinates locked. The rift spat him out into the blackness of normal space and directly into a war zone. The Queen's capital world was burning. Enemy ships surrounded the planet, raining fire onto its crystal towers. The Queen's flagship fought alone against a swarm of Cathar war cruisers. The palace's defensive shields flickered, close to failing. Rourke pushed the skiff's engines to their limit. "Queen, I'm here." Her voice came back through the comms, tight with strain. "You should not have made it." "I told you I would," he said. He guided the skiff through the chaos, weaving between enemy fire until he reached the flagship's docking bay. The moment he stepped out, the air was filled with shouts, weapons fire, and the sharp scent of scorched metal. Two of the Queen's guards rushed him toward the command deck. When the doors opened, she was there, silver skin streaked with battle dust, her golden eyes brighter than ever. She wore armor now, a living blend of crystal and steel, and in her hand was a blade that shimmered like sunlight on water. "You came through the rift," she said. "I said I'd stand with you," he replied. There was no time for more. The deck shook as the Cathar breached the palace shield. The Queen's forces fell back toward the throne chamber. Rourke stayed at her side, cutting down attackers with swift, brutal efficiency. When they reached the throne, it was no longer a place of ceremony, it was the last stand. Dozens of Cathar warriors flooded into the hall. The Queen and Rourke fought back to back, each one covering the other's blind spots. Her blade danced like living light. His strikes were sharp and relentless. Every time one of them was forced, back the other pulled them forward again. But the Kethar kept coming. One warrior lunged past the line, swinging a heavy axe toward the queen. Rourke stepped in front, taking the blow across his side. Pain tore through him, but he drove his own blade into the attacker's chest before dropping to one knee. The queen spun, cutting down two more before kneeling beside him. "You fool," she said softly. "Still alive," he managed, gritting his teeth. "Still yours to command." Her gaze locked on his, and in that moment something shifted. The golden fire in her eyes was no longer just the light of a ruler. It was something personal. With a sudden cry, she rose, rallying her forces. "For the throne! For the Dominion!" The Vare soldiers surged forward, striking with renewed fury. Within minutes, the Kethar broke, retreating toward their ships. The capital's skies cleared, the last enemy vessels fleeing into the darkness. Silence fell over the throne hall, broken only by the sound of Rourke's breathing. The queen turned. To him, her armor streaked with black and silver from the fight. She extended her hand. "You offered this once, human," she said. "I accept it now, not as a surrender but as a pact." He took her hand, gripping it firmly despite the pain in his side. "Then we stand together." Her voice softened, so only he could hear. "From this day, no one touches my crown without touching your hand first." The Vare soldiers knelt not in fear but in recognition. A human had stood in their queen's defense, and now his fate was bound to hers. Rourke didn't know what the future would bring, whether the Dominion's enemies would rise again, or whether the Council would ever fully accept him. But he knew one thing. He had walked into her world as an outsider and stayed as something more. Not as a prisoner, not as a servant, but as the one she would turn to when the galaxy itself came for her throne.